Welcome all. I thank you all for coming here in the rain this morning to hear what we hope is a lively discussion. And we say hello to those who are at home on Zoom. We apologize for being a little late in starting, but the food was quite good.
It was really good. It was.
And those of you who missed out on the food, on the menu here, there are recipes available for you to try at home with a link from the show. This morning, we welcome Hannah Block and Oz Begun, who are our Madison Jewish community shlichim, and they're going into their second year here. They both live in Beit Shemesh, outside of Jerusalem, and got married in the army.
Yeah. What's that?
They're still so young that it couldn't have been too long ago.
2 years.
Hannah was an intelligence unit and Oz was in a combat unit called Eagles. In addition, they are very experienced educators and workers with youth. For Hannah, this includes managing a program for youth and children with disabilities, leading dialogue circles, tutoring at-risk youth, and volunteering as a youth counselor at a children's learning center. For Oz, this includes working with the Bronfman Fellowship Program as a recruitment coordinator, leading dialogue circles, being a counselor for high schoolers, tutoring children with special needs, and coaching basketball, my favorite Israeli sport.
Not yet, but will.
Well, Cal Brody was a guard in Illinois when I entered college. And he is sort of the force behind Israeli basketball. Finally, besides sports, they enjoy learning philosophy, which is beyond me, especially Jewish philosophy. And they love to read, cook, and travel. What is most fun for them is enjoying a cup of coffee with good conversation, which I hope they had this morning. They had wanted to be shlichim for a very long time, love being in Madison. We love them as they celebrate Shabbat with us nearly every weekend. Teach our youth at Midrashah, run preschool activities with our young families, as well as our middle and high school youth. Join in our young adult events and participate in our Chagim. They always smile, and I've noticed that this morning behind the masks, are full of enthusiasm, and we're lucky to have them as presenters for this morning's Kolot Kehillah. The topic today is of great import, especially for them, but for us as well. Israeli elections from the eyes of the Israelis. And I welcome them to the podium.
Thank you for the lovely introduction. I feel like I don't know myself that good. And also for the amazing food. So if I talk too fast or not understandable, so please interrupt anytime. Okay. Yeah. So gonna start with some basic questions, and then we'll give some insight and we'll give some time for the discussion. So please
Feel free to
interrupt
ask
us.
anytime.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Knesset Parliament, we will try to explain the the basics, because it's very hard sometimes to Americans to like understand. It's so different. So we will try to do that. So in the Knesset, in the parliament, we have 120 MKs, which is like Knesset members, okay? And this is everyone belong to a party, okay? It can be like infinity of parties, but like we don't have infinity of them, just a lot. So we have 120 MKs, and if you want to control, if you want to govern, you need to have the majority, which means 61. Okay, this is the.
Why do we have 120?
So there is a meaning for that, and it's not the Sanhedrin though.
Yeah, it's like the old Knesset that we had, like before the Kolot, was also 120, so it's a symbolic number.
Okay, so the coalition, we're just saying the majority. In some rare cases, it can be less, but like you need to have some parties that like are neutral. But most of the time, it's 61 or more. Now we literally have 61. Like the last coalition was 61 MKs.
Which is very unstable because you only need one congressman, like MK, that will like change his mind, and you lose all the stability.
Which happened. It's happened. So the coalition will like need to build the govern system, which is the Memshala, the government, okay? And now actually, because the Norwegian, I think, law, this is in Hebrew what's called, if you are a minister in the Memshala, in the government, you're not a Knesset member, okay? So it's like allow them to have more time to spend in the Memshala. And the Memshala is like the ministers, they basically doing the stuff, okay? Meanwhile, the Knesset, the parliament, are making the laws, okay? So they're making the laws and they're supervising it.
Like having like a long distance vision, more.
Hopefully.
Okay, so questions about these three terms? Okay. So now fun facts. Okay, so obviously we have a lot of crime style people that used to be MKs, unfortunately. So usually it happens after they're being MKs, but we have one interesting story about Stani Plata Sharon, who used to live in France and was like wanted there by the police because he did a lot of crimes, and he knows that when you are an MK in Israel, no one can like put you in jail. Like you have this. Sorry. So he ran to the Knesset, and he was weirdly elected, maybe because people wanted something new and fresh, or because they thought it was funny. So it was actually a Chaver Knesset, a congressman, and he had this weird sentence he used to say, which is "Ma ata asita b'shvil medina?" What did you do for the country? So
It's one bizarre story.
Yeah.
Okay, another bizarre story that we just opened it with the light part of it. So one of the MKs was in the hospital, Avram Borg.
No, Albert Borg was like
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I'm a little bit sorry.
Yeah.
And there was rumors that he passed away, and the Knesset literally did like a silent moment for his memory, and like said a nice thing about him and what did he do. Like it was like from all across the political spectrum, right? Because like someone passed away, everyone is so nice, so he wasn't. So he said in his bed and heard all these nice things. Very happy that he's still alive and he heard all these nice things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Okay. So as you know, because the system is so like unstable, we had a few very short governments that ruled in Israel. The shortest one was only 3 months, It was the second one of Golda Meir after Yom Kippur War. Yeah, so hope we won't beat that one this time.
Yeah.
Another fun fact is that we have a lot of MKs that used to be sons or daughters of another MKs, and we even have a family of, well, the Dayan family that had 3 generations of MKs. So maybe it's easier when someone knows your family name or feels like you're
Kind of
around
famous.
it. Yeah, not with you. Okay, now.
Okay, any question about the light part? Okay, so now we will take the hard job, and like this is the hard part, and try to explain the parties, which means the political perspective of every denomination and like small denomination in Israel.
So it
Okay,
changes
so-
so quickly that we finished making it and sending it to Deb on time on Friday. And this one is already slightly irrelevant because something changed through Motzei Shabbat, like yesterday night. So we'll keep the presentation, but we'll explain the differences that happened. Okay.
Okay, so we will start with 2 parties that consider as the central parties, okay? This is actually an interesting idea that I think US need to consider it as an idea of like parties that like their whole perspective is like the
Consensus.
the consensus, yes. So like they will take the people who's not radical and say we are representing you, okay? Which I think has a value. So we will start with the Yesh Atid, with Yair Lapid, which is actually now the prime minister, okay? Yesh Atid was established in 2012, I think, 2012, and was basically the kind of backlash for like people feel that there is a lot of radical parties and saying like, no, we want people who represent the people just working, want good system. They're mostly living in the center, in like Gush Dan, in Tel Aviv, in Hadar, like the more suburban areas, okay? But it was actually, it's funny to say, but it was kind of a revolution. It was like the idea of like, there is a center in Israel, and the center has a voice, okay?
Okay. Do you know what Yesh Atid means in Hebrew? There is a future.
There is a future.
Another one like this is Benny Gantz party. Okay, so Benny Gantz party used to have a lot of names, even though it didn't had a lot of years in its resume. So the first name was Kolot, blue and white. Now we call this party Machaneh Mamlechti, which means the national unity party. Now we
Collaborate.
yeah, I guess collaborating with the party of Gidon Sal. And together they have more mandates.
Yeah, I guess this is like kind of like a bit slightly more right wing of Yesh Atid. So it's kind of like the same people, but with orientation more like security orientation.
Yeah, since Benny Gantz was like the head of like.
Yeah, they have two generals in the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, so as you can notice, it's very hard to explain that because there is also like the border of like, if you get less than 4 mandates, like 4 from like 120, you don't get in. It's like, it's called Ahuz HaChasima, the block percentage.
Yeah.
So it makes parties like collaborate to pass that, even though they're not
Exactly the
the
same.
cup of tea of each other,
Yeah.
which is also interesting.
Okay.
Okay, I think the most famous one,
Yeah.
Likud, Benjamin Netanyahu, the person that like, his name and prime minister was like very permanent for a long, long time. So I think our goal now will try to be like, to explain why it's not the American version of Trump. Because it's not. Like there is different history to that, and different context, I think is the right word for that. So I'll try to explain, and I'll try, like we'll try. Okay.
Maybe start with what's similar, so it's a bit.
Okay, what's similar? So I think that the definition of populism is very similar, okay? And it's got more similar during the year of Trump. Bibi, as we like, I think, like it's very famous nickname, Bibi, really is a sharp person. Everyone can agree about that. And when he recognized that like the word go to like a populism as a wave, as a movement, so he adopt a lot of like similar attitude or style, but it was very different before that. And I feel that like the Likud as a movement started as like as the Ma'arach with Begin and represent the actually, how I said it, like the non-privileged voices, if I take like the very modern language. So in the beginning of the state of Israel, there was Mapai, which was like David Ben Gurion, you know, like the strong, most of them Ashkenazi socialist people. And the Likud represent the people who came from North Africa, from Eastern
Also big cities, and they didn't. Not sometimes they were more religious. So sometimes they were just not as privileged, and they felt like no one takes care of them. And in some ways, that's true. So I feel like the sentiment of like some people here like the labor, like the more socialist without like social rights, but people know that a long time ago when they were ruling in the government, it wasn't exactly like not trusting these voices. I can say that my family, a lot of them were in Kiryat Gat, in a peripheral development town, very traditional, from North Africa, and a lot of them still like always vote for Likud, not just because of Bibi, even before that when it was Begin and Shamir, they really like feel close to this place, and in many ways their situation got better during the years for many reasons, but some of it is about the Likud, or at least that's how they feel. And this is a big part of why they vote to this party. So it's not like a like new movement or something that is like just because of Bibi is so charismatic, it goes way back.
I can give one example just to understand the differences between American history and Israeli history. So Israel was established as a real like heavy socialist country. Actually, like a workers' union, the Histadrut, the biggest workers' union, was the structure of the first government. It was like kind of like copy paste. The Histadrut was the structure of the state, of the country, and when after 48, it became the government. So this is how heavy socialist the country was. And in the beginning, it was a classic shchitut. Like the money goes to like the people who knows each other. So it was socialist. On paper, it was for the weak people, but like literally, it was like the kibbutzim got a lot of money. Specific towns that was close to the plate got a lot of money. And when the Ma'arach, was before the Likud, got in like 77, in the first time, got like create a coalition, Israel realized that all the kibbutzim, all the socialist towns was in huge debts, and till today, it's the biggest investment of Israel. It was, I think, if I remember right, it was 400 billion shekels, which is still the biggest like spend of money of Israel. So a lot of people in Israel are like kind of like traumatized by that. They're like, whoa, you speak one So this is the name, this is the face. Everyone talk about him. No one really talk about anything else, basically. So I think it's important.
Not exactly the style they want anymore, and some of them are looking for a more calm and humble right-winning party, which we'll talk about soon. Okay.
We'll have to hear questions. So here you have, don't hesitate.
Okay, Shas. Okay, so Shas is a ultra-Orthodox Sephardic party founded because a lot of actually racism from the Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox parties and institutions long time ago by Yaakov Cohen. And ever since that, Shas was led by very smart people that understood that if you only go to the Sephardic ultra-Orthodox space, it's a very small one, you will never be powerful. So they kept opening institutions and organizations that help all the society. For example, in Bet Shemesh, my hometown, we have a school that just opened that most of the people who go to study there are kids from former Soviet Union countries. Some of them don't even identify as Jews, but it's a very good school and they get free meals every day. So a lot of people who, when you see them on the street, you will never assume they vote for an ultra-Orthodox party or voting for this party because of that reason. They always talk about the phrase of the shkufim, the ones that are not be seen. But it's controversial if they really like for the long term makes the voter's life better, because some people think like it's easier to always have these people who needs you and they're still poor, and some people claim that because of that just doesn't really try to make their life better in the long term, but only in the short term. You know, you won't be hungry, but will you have a better education in the university, for example? So, but in a lot of ways, just did create a big change. And in the past few years, I feel like the interesting part is that Shas became what Bibi Netanyahu calls the Shutafim HaTiv'iyim, the natural partners, allies, and because at the beginning, the ultra-Orthodox parties weren't necessarily right-winning. They mostly care about their voters and actually like giving them budgets and money. But Bibi Netanyahu, as I say, is a very sharp person, and in the past few years, it became very clear that like the voters of Shas became very more right-winning in terms of like
Shas in 2006 voted for the Hitnatkut, the disengagement plan from Gaza Strip. So it's not so far, and it was like a huge shift. And I think both, so Shas and Likud are kind of same party, not really, but like they know that without each other, they lose a lot of voters. So they kind of the same party. And as I think, as you can notice, they use they're using the same attitude. They're using a lot of like anger, a lot of
feeling like I'm not a privileged one, and now I have to take care of myself.
Of the past. Yeah. So it goes both ways. The criticism on them, which is also make a lot of sense, is that they're using the anger from the past and like they try to continue it, right? Even though there is people who saying like it's not relevant anymore. So this is like a huge argument inside the Israeli society of it is a huge problem now, or there is a leaders who are using this like anger, you know, like the feeling of like invisibility, that like the privileged person people don't look at me, or like it's like a huge argument that we can understand here as part of the parties.
Yeah.
Okay. The United Torah Judaism.
I'm good at
Agudat Torah. Yeah, no, Yadut Torah. Yadut Torah. Okay, this is the classic ultra-Orthodox party. Very, very stable. I think it's like always between 6 to 8 mandates. Always, like never less, never more. It is kind of, so people look at ultra-Orthodox because they look very different, and they say like, ah, wow, of course they will be together, but it is kind of a unique situation. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why it's the same.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We have the Hasidim and the Litta'im that are completely two different kinds of ultra-Orthodox that usually don't agree about a lot of the things, but because of the Achuz HaChasima, the need to have 4 mandates at least to get into the Knesset, they are a lot of the time go together, which creates a lot of problems between them. Another interesting thing is that they are very powerful and they have like these secure mandates they know they always get. But you will think that because the ultra-Orthodox families have a lot of children, so their mandates will grow very fast, right? Like if you will go 20 years ago and then you go now, think about all the ultra-Orthodox kids that were born and already have the right to vote, so they're 18, and they will be much bigger than they used to be. And the interesting thing is it didn't grow so fast as we expected. And a lot of it is some of the ultra-Orthodox left the religion, and we don't talk about it so often because we don't know the data so good, so well, but I don't think it's just that. I think a lot of the ultra-Orthodox people, even if they won't admit it proudly, because sometimes it's against the rabbis, sometimes it's against the consensus of their society, feel like their leaders don't really look out for them in many ways. And as we talked about Shas, want to keep them, unfortunately, very poor and very uneducated in like the wide world education. And we saw that in the COVID times that a lot of ultra-Orthodox like the leaders don't look out for them and don't give them all the information they need to be safe. So they're still very strong parties and everyone wants to work with them because they know they're secure mandates, but people claim they could be bigger. So we hope that they will have some like rethinking about things to gain more power and change something. That's about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Avigdor Lieberman, Israel Tayitenu. Israel is our home. So I don't know if you know that, but Avigdor Lieberman is the reason that, like, it's people think it's a good thing or a bad thing. We can argue about that, but he is the reason that like the right-wing parties has a coalition till like 5 years ago, and now not anymore. So Avigdor Lieberman was a really good friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, he was the prime minister, but like all that. And in one time, understood is how he described it, that Bibi Netanyahu it's like a biggest threat. It's more threat to Israel than a good thing. And he said like, I can't sit with him anymore. And from now and then, like, so he is like the shift, okay, of the mandates. And he represents mostly, like he's a secure mandates, as we can use to say. It's the former Soviet Union resident that came to Israel after 91. And it's also an interesting story. In the beginning, they were kind of left-wing till the Intifada, the huge terror wave of the early 2000s. And after that, there was
the terror attack in the Delfinario.
And yeah, the biggest terror.
Young people from the former Soviet Union used to go out to. After that, a lot of them became very.
A lot of them shift to the right wing. In terms, nothing like, like ideological or like a radical part, but as very like security based and want to be safe. And it was one of the huge shifts that happened in the Intifada, after the terror wave. And this is like the base of Avigdor Lieberman. Another thing that actually this year was very dominant is the free market attitude. In Israel, it's very expensive. If you know that, if you go, like, you will notice, Israel is very, very expensive. Part of a lot of products that coming from another countries are heavily taxed, I guess. And I think the Lieberman was put a lot of effort and make a reformations on this market and make things cheaper. And so he has also a lot of, not a lot, but some votes for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go. Merav Michaeli.
Yeah, Avoda, as we call it, is actually like the Israel Labor Party. It's like the daughter of Mapai, the party that David Ben-Gurion, our first prime minister, was part of. I feel like 6 years ago, it almost didn't pass the 4 mandates they needed to be in the Knesset. And it was a big shock for a lot of people who used to vote for it and their parents used to vote for it for many years, because they said, we used to be like the government party, okay, the prime minister party, and now we almost don't pass the 4 mandates we need. So after that, they actually did a very big discussion and inviting their voters to talk with them and think how we can increase our power. It was a very beautiful process to see, I have to say. And they changed a lot of things. Merav Michaeli wasn't the leader back then, and now she is. She's a very interesting person. Some people call her very radical feminist. Many reasons. Part of it is she always wears black because she doesn't want her clothes to be an issue. She always talks in a floral language of female, even so
in Hebrew, plural is just male, it's masculine, right?
Yeah.
Like in the language, we used to say if we talk about they, female and male, so it's just male. So Merav Michaeli talked with atem ve'atem, so including both of them. We don't really have non-binary language because Israel, Hebrew is very hard language to add this one. But this is very, for a lot of people, is very.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting party. They have one of the last parties that still have primaries in Israel, and they have rich primaries, which means it's a girl, boy, girl, male, female, in their party. Doesn't matter who had more votes. If 2 male in a row, they will change it to have a half and half. But the interesting thing is,
in the last primaries, the woman, the woman side of it, get hurt by that. There was more women up, and then they go down in the list because they're the retrach list.
yeah.
You understand that? You understand the situation? Okay, so in the avodah, in terms of in the sake of being egalitarian, there was if the leader is a woman, next one is a man, and etc. Okay?
So
for egalitarian purpose.
To make sure we have enough women in the party, which is a good thing. And
yeah, because in the general politics in Israel, there is not enough at all. Okay? But then they just realized that there was more women in the 3, 4, 5, and then they had to go down.
Because of that regulation. So it's very interesting that sometimes the voters are more I will say progressed than the regulations, and it's food for thought. Okay, that's Merav Michaeli. Very avant-garde, very new. She took the party to a very more modern and young audience.
Which is very different from the past. So in the past.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
I haven't touched anything. Here is better. No, it's okay. I'll just go back. Okay. So
okay. Here? Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. Okay. So I just want to say that in the past, the average age of the avodah of the labor was like the voters was mostly like 40s, 50s, around that. Now it's more like 20s, 30s, which is very interesting. It's kind of like different party. The next one is Meretz. Who's here about Meretz here? Meretz. So it's pretty famous. It's more than from this like permanent parties, but in the last years they almost like every time they like pass the block percentage, but like they almost on the edge. Meretz is considered as the leftiest Jewish party, I guess. Also started as like a very young, we can also say, I know, hipster party, but the voters got old. So it's like now sometimes like the labor considers like more lefty or young than theirs.
I would say also that the avodah, the labor, is way more practical parties. They're always willing to sit in the government. They're always willing to, make their hands a little bit dirty. Because, once you're part of the coalition, some laws will pass that you don't agree with, and it doesn't make you look good, but you still get to make some change. But Meretz is way more purist. Many years they refused to sit in any coalition because in Israel, which is very conservative and right-wing place, no coalition will be good enough for them to sit and like look good in their voters' eyes. So actually, last year was the first in many years times that the Meretz party was part of the coalition. And I personally know people that used to vote for them and said, oh my God, they're sitting with Bennett. I would never vote for them because now, you always lose votes when you do something. But that's why a lot of the time, Meretz actually didn't pass a lot of laws, unlike the Avodah. Even so, sometimes they have many similar views about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to say what?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Joint list, Ayman Uda. So we're trying to create here not just the parties, but like a bigger picture. So again, if you have any question, let us know. Because we're trying to draw here like a kind of a spectrum. So if we had like the labor and Meretz, which is like the Jewish leftiest, okay. Now we have the joint list, which is like the Arab, like still the biggest Arab list, not just Muslims, but also like Christian Arabs, which it's called, their name, the joint list, is because they, okay. Because they,
First time I'm taller
Mukafim.
than you.
Ah, nice. Like they're collected a lot of different parties.
Small parties because of this four mandates rule.
Yeah.
That's why it's called a joint.
Yeah. And then like it's a huge range inside. Like if we imagine, let's say like Palestinian country, okay, it will be like the whole
coalition.
even not the whole coalition, the whole parliament in one list. So there is like secular communist, and there is like polygamist in the same list. Okay, Ayman Uda started as like his statement was, we need to be part of the decision making. Okay, we need to be part of this process, not being part of the coalition, not being part of the government, but still we need to get more involved. It was like he started like 2015. He had a lot of mandates. They had like 15 mandates, like huge. but then he kind of like crossed more to the, we have a lot of, we can think about a lot of reasons, but he crossed to more, more purist, more aggressive, less cooperative. Yeah, like this is also kind of like show one, I would say like movement or attitude that happened, but we will see very soon another party that like go,
the other way.
yeah, like even more, I don't know if it's a left or right. I love that it's not so clear which side is it, but it's more to the Israeli society, more close to the society than Ayman Uda.
I have to say that for many Israelis, this person and this party is like a red flag, and having a coalition that this party is part of it, or just even like neutral but supported from outside the coalition, is like a red flag for this coalition because, and this is a big reason, is attitude against terror. And when I say terror, I mean terror against Jews. So,
Israelis, not
yeah,
just Jews.
not just Jews, but Israelis. Many years he tried his best not to get into this topic, but when he'd been asked and he couldn't resist answering, he never he never condemned terror attacks against Israelis, and because of, and sometimes he even like been caught talking not in Hebrew necessarily, but pro terror attacks in a way that could be like understood that way. And because of that, for many Israelis, this party, unfortunately, is like irrelevant. And I have to say that I think it's a shame because this is still the biggest Arabic party in Israel. And even for many people who want the Arab society to be, in much better shape and like be much more closer to the decision making, for them it's like, I want that, but I can't have that. So this is, I think, the reason for.
Wait, one more thing. So just a really breaking news from yesterday. So in the joint list, there is like the radical aggressive part, which is Balad. And their idea is we have nothing to do with Israel. We're just like a resisting movement. And they had a huge negotiation in the last month. Like if they will break up, what will happen? And yesterday, they jointly signed on a paper that they won't be part of anything. So Balad won this game, let's say, this negotiation. So they take another step, like far outside from Israel, or like part of the civilian decision making. And this brings us to another person that I think now he's the most interesting person in the Israeli politics. So Mansour Abbas, he's actually a Muslim religious leader. He's part of the South branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is very interesting because in other countries, mostly Muslim countries, Muslim brotherhoods are out of the law. In Jordan, Syria, not a country so much, but in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, there is a lot of places that they're out of the law. In Israel, just the North branch, which is like he was responsible for terror attack, is out of the law, but the South part is not. Another thing that happened that Mansour Abbas said, he took the direction of we need to be part of the decision, the process of the government. But he took it a step forward. Now he basically saying, we will be part of any government because we need to make the situation of the Israeli Arab communities better. Yeah. In constructions, in everything, basically. Education, criminal situation. And he said, and this was the first time that Arab Party was part of the coalition.
Yeah, we had Arab politicians in Jewish parties way before that, but this is like an Arab party in the coalition. It was a big deal from a lot of people. I think wrongly, it was like a bad thing, but I think it was amazing to see how they worked so hard for their voters and for their population. I have to say that also came with saying, we understand that this Jewish state is not going anywhere. And if we keep fighting its existence, we won't get anything for our voters. And we will just be stuck in a worse place for us. So we will have to say out loud, we understand that this is a Jewish state and it's not going to be destroyed in the next few years. And now what can we do for our people? And I think that's a big change between Mansour Abbas and Ayman Ouda, that would never be able to say this word out loud. And I also think he feels like his people don't want him to say these words, even so they don't get enough budget because of that, and not close to the decision making.
Yeah, another thing that was I think very fruitful, let's say, is that he chose to make it to make the collaboration with right-wing parties, and he made like a deeper change, not just a political change, a political difference of there is a coalition with Arab party, but also he made the difference of it's not a right-wing, left-wing issue. And I think it was amazing that it's literally in the political system of Israel, he just did a one movement and all the perspective flipped. Because he could do I'm part of the left side, but then it's kind of stuck, right? Same, yeah. It's more of the same. But now he's saying no, I came open, and I was I want to work with everyone. And therefore he's one of the most powerful forces now in the political situation. Okay.
One last two parties before we go to the next one.
Okay. Who here heard about those friends?
Okay.
Okay. This is the religious Zionist party. The radical right-wing parties. Okay, I'll try to convince you that they're not so similar between themselves. Okay, they're also one product of the block percentage. Okay, but they are also 50. 50
shades of
50 shades of a radical right. Yeah. Because there are differences between them. Ben Gvir is okay, classic young, work with a lot of people that fell from the education system. I have friends who grew up with me in high school that dropped high school and joined him when he was not a politician yet. He's very, very sharp. So you can never caught him in a classic mistake of getting racist, a classic racist mistake. But it's very clear, the underline, you know what I mean? What he really saying, it's very, very clear.
Yeah, I also think that he points really important topics. There is a reason why he got so popular. For example, he talks about that in the desert, in the Negev, we don't have enough power, and because of that, the Israeli citizens there are suffering from crimes and having to pay protection to some gangs. He's talking about real issues that the governments during the past few years didn't talk about enough and didn't solve. So sometimes I feel and because he got so popular, we understood what are the real problems. It doesn't mean necessarily everyone has to agree about his ideas of solutions for that, but I think it's interesting to listen to his claims.
And I think it's also a classic technique of you point for real issues, and then from the back door, you add a lot of different things. So he's very popular in young generation. Bezalel Smotrich is more a classic, very religious person. You see what I'm saying? Most of Ben Gvir friends, not so religious. It's very hard to understand, but they're not so religious. They're mostly radical politically. Smotrich is the classic, very religious people. It's not even a conservative. It is radical, but religious radical. Okay. I think in US it's considered as conservative, but it's not a real conservative thing. They don't really friends. Okay, like they have really different attitude, really different crowd that they talk about, but they got together because of the blood percentage and with the promoting of the Likud. Benjamin Netanyahu put a big effort there to make them run together.
Because the right winning side won't lose these votes.
Yeah, I think it's like the huge question is, so now in the polls, they have a lot of mandates. I'm not sure if it will be the real thing. Like every time, like in every election, there is the one party of there was 4 and now the 11. I'm not sure if it will be really 11 mandates. I hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last party, but is it the last party?
Okay. Zionist Spirit, Ayelet Shaked.
Used to be Bennett, who used to be the last prime minister before Lapid, but Bennett retired from the political life so far.
I think they're like the political form of heavy gamblers. They always take risky decisions. They got from outside of the political life to be prime minister to, as we will say now, very close to outside of political life.
Yeah.
Just this morning, we talk about this morning. So Ayelet Shaked joined with another list, and this morning, which is 5 days before they closed the lists, they broke up. So it's
very, very uncertain.
Yeah, and I think it's also a good example for the political system of Israel.
Yeah.
Everything is
so fast. I will have to say that the base I think Ayelet Shaked tried to reach are the right-winning people who are way more nationality, way more open-minded and less religious. But she still tried to reach the national religious people who are more open, because it used to be a very strong party for religious who are, let's say, going to the army, still part of the system, but very religious. And this party used to be called a Mafdal, and then it was
Which
called...
considered as a left party.
Not necessarily left,
She said with the labor most of the time.
Yeah, but they said with everyone. But in the past few years, this denomination in Israel, it kind of been divided into two groups: the more radical and the more light or open, liberal. But the important part is, the more liberal you are, the less likely you will vote for a religious party. Even so, it's a liberal religious party. You don't consider yourself just religious. You consider yourself a lot of things. And therefore, even so, this group is not so small. Some of them vote for Yesh Atid, some of them vote for Likud, some of them vote for Gantz and other parties. And therefore, this party got much weaker. Yeah. Okay, I feel
I think it's time for questions.
Yeah.
Could you explain what it is the list?
The parties.
So the list is okay, yeah, it's a good question. So every party has a list.
Sure. So the question was, what is a list?
Yeah, so every party has a list, and then if one mandate is one MK, Knesset member. So you have a list of from 1 to, I don't know.
120.
Yeah, kinda. And then if you got 4 mandates, so from the list you have the 4 members. Okay? The first four. And then etc. etc.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so important which list do you have. So for example, in the last elections, the Zionist Spirit was different name though. Was the prime minister party, but some of them, because they switched from right wing and they sit with the left wing parties, some of them the Knesset members abandoned the list. So very eclectic, very eclectic.
Okay. So talked about the parties. Now let's use the polls. As we know, it's changing all the time, but so far the biggest parties are Likud and Yesh Atid, which puts Bibi Netanyahu and Yair Lapid as the two people who are more likely to have the mandate to create a government. But as we know from last time, having the biggest party doesn't necessarily mean you'll have the power to create a coalition. Because last time Bennett had 6 mandates or something and still has that power because of different reasons. We don't see here the party of Ayelet Shaked because
it's so, as I say, heavy gamblers.
yeah,
They always
but
like,
maybe we will be surprised.
yeah. We can see blue and white, like the National Unity Party
Afghans.
after Yesh Atid. You can see that like the center of Israel, it's basically the biggest party. You see what I'm saying? Because there is Yesh Atid and the Machaneh Mamlachti, which is kind of like slightly left and slightly right of the center, had together around like 35, 36, sometimes 40, okay? Which I think it's important thing to focus on because most of the time, the most the noisiest people are the radical parts, but it's not like there is a majority in the middle. Religious Zionism, it's like 11. You can check me after, but I'm very skeptic about that. Yeah. Okay, let's go in the science.
Okay. So now some insights.
Okay, so because of the system, small groups in Israel have a bigger power than their electoral power. I think we just realized that, right? Because we need 61. So if you're like 4 mandates and you're the 61 finger, you have a lot of power. Therefore, and I think we can open now let's open now a painful case, okay? So who heard about the Western Wall agreement with the egalitarian place that wasn't always back and forth, right? So why it happened? It happened because the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox parties, was like against. And even though like 80% of the parties was like between pro and like I don't care, okay? Like because there was like 6 people who was like really anti, so it's not important enough.
Yeah, that's part of the problems of this system.
It is part of the problem, and I think it's a really big and important key to understand that. So like a small amount of people that like really care about one thing, sometimes is more powerful than like the center.
The majority that does care about it, but won't pay the price for it. Okay. I think an important thought is that Israel had a very good decade in many aspects. The decade that Bibi Netanyahu was prime minister was a good decade to Israel. I think a lot of people don't understand it here. Like Israelis feel like the economy got better, the terror attacks got fewer, and they felt more secure to walk in the streets, and they had more economic opportunities. In many aspects, it was also not such a good decade in Israel, and it's controversial, but this is a sentiment that a lot of Israelis feel. Like we had a good prime minister, and some of them even say, like, I know he's not a saint, I know he's not perfect, but I trust him that he will, even if he'll just continue to have this decade for one more decade, it's good enough for me. Like I know what I'm getting, and it's an okay government. And I don't trust these new parties. I'm not used to them as my prime ministers, and therefore I'm afraid of changes, which is I think a sentiment a lot of us can understand if we like take out the context of like the symbol of Bibi Netanyahu here. And I think like we have to understand that when we come to the discussions, that Israel has come from, thank God, a good place.
I also love to add that like in US, people like promise a lot of things, but I think it's mostly economics, right? Like what's the numbers? There is inflation, there is not inflation. What's the situation? In Israel, the catalyst, right? Like the litmus test most of the time, if I can go safe to places. So for example, I think like in 95 after Rabin assassination, okay, in like the beginning of the 2000s, there was a huge terror attacks. And before that, like most of the Israeli society was slightly left and was a lot of talking about let's do agreements, There was a process of a peace agreement. After that, there was a huge terror attacks and a lot, like a huge population from the Israeli society goes right. And after that, there was less terror attacks. So people was like, okay, we will go with that. We go safe. Okay. So I think this is a really, really interesting and important thing to know if you want to understand like the process of the political situation.
Yeah, I think it's been understood. Like when you vote, you don't vote for like here, like a president, you vote for a party, which means you don't really choose who will be the prime minister. And someone can say, oh, you know what, vote for me because I will make this person a prime minister, and then change his mind, and you can't control it. So very different from here.
Okay, a fear of not passing the electoral threshold.
Yeah, like the fermented.
Like the fermented boundary and the weird combination it creates. So it is creating weird combinations, as we saw. Sometimes it's more important to have a government than what is the government. This is a very sad insight that we learned in the past 5 years, after we had like 3 years of like without a budget. So think about the outcomes of that.
Yeah. And some people now like go with the ticket of I will vote for the party that will have the most power to create a coalition. Honestly, I don't care what coalition it will be, who will be there, who will be the prime minister. I just want to have stability and 4 years of coalition and not having to think about going to vote every few months. So that's like a big ticket that a lot of people will vote just for the powerful parties, not even if they don't agree with them.
Big ticket, small standards, like a really low one.
That's like a very important thing for me to share. I think it's very unlike US politics. This conflict of like right-wing, pro-Bibi, against Bibi, all those conversations are inside our family dinners, our Shabbat dinners, okay? I can share that in my family, I had an uncle that was like in love with Bibi and always talked about the amazing things that he did. And he did some amazing things. So he had that strong claim, and I had also aunts and uncles that were like, will never see a vote for Bibi and think he's the worst sniper Israel could ever have. And we always had to gather together for Shabbat dinners and holidays and still have fun and love each other.
It was hard. It's not, we don't romanticize.
Yeah, but it also makes that we understand who are the other people. I feel like here, sometimes I feel like, you know, when I got here, someone said to me, not in back Israel, don't worry. Don't worry, there are not Republicans here in Madison. And I said, like, first of all, I don't care. I would love to meet everyone. But it was funny to me that it was like so obvious to that person that like everyone here was the same as I am. And when I was in Phoenix, in the Jewish community, it was like the other way around. Like, obviously, everyone here is Republicans, and we don't like this and that. And like, they were shocked that I know like Democrats are like the nicest people, and thought them essentially him to each other.
Yeah.
Because you are all very nice and you should know each other better. So in Israel, it's not like that. Like, and no one will say something like that because they know like you might be the other party. And it has like, you know, pluses and minuses, I feel.
Mostly pluses.
But it also creates a lot of tension inside the families.
Yeah.
Like some families decided we don't talk about politics anymore because it creates like huge fights.
I think this is like one of the insights that are like connected, like we connect really strongly to US. Because I think that now in US it's like kind of even like a geographic question, like where you choose to like to live. This is what your political perspective is. I feel it's like very, very dangerous. It's like in the end, in Israel, there is, I hope it will continue has some really bad direction. But most of the time, there is the feeling of like, in the end, it's the same family. Like I don't vote just as my family. In also in my family, there is like I have cousins that vote for like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir for years, and I have a cousin that vote for Meretz. So like in the end, they can talk about like this is the end of Israel. This is like a new era. You know, all this the regular things that we heard from politicians, but in the end, it's like in the same table. And I think that here our experience is way more like, whoa, it's literally like cities, it's states, it's like, okay.
Okay. Your turn. Questions, thoughts, insights, want to hear you. Yeah.
The next election, Avodah, Meretz, more liberal, Kolot.
Okay, so the question was how much it's likely to have the next coalitions, much similar to the one that used to be before.
Or like,
Yesh Atid, Avodah, Labor, Meretz, what do you think?
okay, I'll try to do it. So I think that after, as I said, after Oslo agreements, after the like 2000 years, there is no classic left in Israel. There is some left, there is left economically, there is left, you see like there is all these combinations. So if it will be like a more left, so it was more left coalition, it would be like the last coalition of like central right and left. I think there is not a lot of chances. Like in the last polls, they have 56 mandates. Only like the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, it's like the 5th election. So we will give up. So give us like things that we want, and we'll go with you. But I think this is like the only.
Yeah, but we can be surprised. Israeli elections is always experience. More questions, more thoughts.
No one has a majority, if it wasn't clear yet. No one has a majority in the last 5 years. Yeah, of course.
What's the likelihood that the indictment of Bibi and actually some kind of trial will result in his loss?
The trial of Bibi?
The trial? Okay, so so the question is, what's the chances of Bibi to like pass laws that will help him to like avoid the?
No, that's not.
No.
We let him go to jail.
If he is actually tried for the fraud charges, gets convicted, would that ruin his chances?
If the trial will affect his.
Well, it depends. If it will come out like guilty by all charges,
So he can't.
so he can't, like literally. But somehow, like it's very interesting to think about it. But many of his charges like weren't as strong as it seemed at the beginning. So
They accuse him in 4 different cases. I think that one of them was very weak, and everyone said that. And actually, this is like the last one that they talk about. So it was kind of like,
yeah.
it was the weak one. Now we actually talk about the strong one. So I don't know.
Also, it can make someone also more powerful, not just weaker. Because if he feels like I've been blamed in something, and in the end it turned out to be a very weak case that they were just accusing me for nothing. Sometimes it can get people angry, like, oh, you're chasing him. I will show you I can support him. So it's like it goes both ways.
This is also classic. What happened now with Trump in the what's called
January.
No, but the FBI in the FBI action, right? The operation with Trump house, because it make like 2 different waves, right? One wave is like, whoa, like it can be a criminal act. Other hand is like, they're chasing him because his political opinion. So it's strength 2 different sides. I think in the end it don't really affect nothing because it's like strength the same parts again and again.
Yeah.
What is the status of the non-Orthodox parties in the political system? Are they gaining or losing?
Interesting.
How conservative?
Are you talking about the one of Bezalel, Smotrich, and Ben-Gvir?
No, it's like the non-Orthodox.
Right.
Because like the secular. Okay, so the question is, what's the status of the non-Orthodox parties in the parliament or in the election?
Do they have a future?
If they have a future.
Conservative and reform religious movement.
Okay, so we can focus on two different things. There is like the reform and conservative, and there is the non-Orthodox religious movement. Okay, so this is actually a really good question. The denominations, like the conservative and reforms denominations, are not so strong in Israel, but it was the first time it was MK was like a reform rabbi, Gilad Kariv. He's a reform rabbi, and he was the CEO, the head of like one of the most important committees in the Knesset, and he also got elected very high in the primaries of the Labor. So it is, I think, there is a future. I think, like specifically, I think that the reform and conservative denominations get more and more, I don't know, like fade in or like part of the Israeli society.
But still, the secular is the biggest denomination, I think, in the Jewish society in Israel.
Maybe we can add one more thing, which is like, there is a denomination, which is not, there is no like such a thing here, but a lot of young people in Israel going to mechinot, it's like a gap year, which they learn Judaism, philosophy, they volunteer, those things. And it's kind of creating like a conservative denomination, but without the history of that. So what I'm saying? Like a lot of mechinot, a lot of gap years that like learn a lot of Torah, learn Jewish philosophy.
But in a secular.
But in a secular way. So it's create kind of a unique, kind of like a unicorn.
Yeah, more thoughts.
Let's go, friend. Let's go. Yeah.
I'm interested in a segment of the Israeli population who made Aliyah from America still vote in our election, our presidential elections. And the religious parties tell them who to vote for, Trump, for example. And I don't really understand this whole affair count by these now Israeli citizens who vote in American elections. And I think Sheldon Benson, he had a big influence, taking over the free newspaper and so on, the English and influencing their lives. But it just makes me infuriated.
Okay, so the question was about the Israeli citizens or also American citizens and also religious, and a lot of them vote for Republicans. Okay, so I have actually a story to share. When I was 18, I was in a gap year before the army in like a institute to learn Torah for girls. So half of this institute was Americans, okay? Like, lessons in English, rabbis who speak English, and obviously there was like the Israeli programs there that was mostly in Hebrew, which I was part of. But we were very close to the American friends. We shared the, dining room and some classes together. And I remember the day Trump was elected, and I felt like I'm in a shiva that I entered for some reason. You saw girls crying in the hall, calling their parents. It was like, oh my God, in Israel. As I say, a lot of drama in the American election, so it affects Israel as well. But obviously, we have a lot of Israelis, as you said, that vote for the Republican Party. I feel like a lot of it was because Trump was he had a lot of problems here in US, but in terms of understanding the Middle East, he did such a better job than Barack Obama, like the one that was before him. And like Israelis felt like they had an ally. That's like when he says, you know, I believe you guys, I trust you guys that you're doing your best. I'm not trying to like make it harder for you guys. Israelis felt it, and some of them weren't even like curious about what's going on here. I think it's a problem that they should care more because, you know, like we also have a big Jewish community here in the US that we care about, and we need to understand their voices. And this is actually part of why we're here. We want Israelis to understand the Jewish community here better and vice versa. But it's also a place that we have to understand that in many eyes, Trump did a good job in the Middle East. You want to add?
I want to add. I think it's a challenge. It's a common challenge of understanding different societies. I think that like a lot of Jewish Americans, it's hard to them what we try to do here, right? To explain from the inside how Israelis understand Israel.
I think that the biggest ones that move the embassy to Jerusalem.
For example.
Yeah.
And he really pulled out a deal with Iran, which the Israelis side.
Yeah. I think
You don't understand so well.
Yeah, but it's big points what you raise.
I'll be more strict, like less polite. I think that Trump has a very I'll be very Israeli, so forgive me. Trump has a very childish perspective of bad guys, good guys. I think it's like horrible for the American society. I think that in the Middle East, it was kind of, it's fit. You know, like he said, like, okay, I have the Iranian side, I have the Saudi Arabia, UAE, Israel, sometimes Egypt side. I took this, like, I'll take this side. And for Israel, it was like just the right time to do that. It was like, okay, we need it. Because Barack Obama tried a different perspective. He tried, let's take the rival and make it a friend, kind of thing, right? Like, let's talk. And actually, I'm not sure, like, in terms of just the nuclear deal, I don't know. Now, no one knows what will happen.
Yeah, but Israelis felt like, wow, like there is like a big country with 80 million people who tries to create a nuclear weapon and says like openly they want to destroy our country, and we have Barack Obama who doesn't afraid of that and doesn't like want to secure us like as much as we expect him to. And I think this is a big part of why Israelis supported Trump. It's not about like the American politics. They don't know enough about healthcare or about I think like maybe even if they will understand more, a lot of it will look different. I do have to say that after what happened in the Capitol,
a lot of Israelis like
changed their mind. In like, for example, there was supposed to be a town that would be called like
Trump.
like the town like in the name of Trump. And after that event, they changed their mind and they changed their name. So I feel like a lot changed because of that event. But before that, they felt like they found someone that cared about them. Yeah.
I have a very hard time understanding why it seemed as Barack Obama promoting the nuclear deal in Iran was harmful to Israel because they were inspected and they were strictly inspected. And to me, in my mind, that's the safest way to be able to be watchful and see what's going on, rather than just abandon the whole thing and know how close they are. I just think, I don't understand the Israeli point of view. I really cannot understand it. I think it was a great deal that Obama struck. And I really, I have a very hard time understanding that the security was there.
So if you can repeat what Bill
Sure.
said, and then we need to wrap it up. 'cause we're-
Yeah. Okay.
Of course. So, okay.
The
The question was about the nuclear deal with Iran and why Israel
didn't like.
don't like it. So this is actually a huge argument in Israel. There is people now, after years, like we don't think, mostly from the like left side, so like it's not such a bad thing. Like why you don't do like I'll say two things because I think we want to talk about the Israeli society. We want to understand that. So one thing is like important to understand the Israeli society is the idea of like sometimes countries and societies are like people. So I think that if Barack Obama did like say like I'm your friend and really like show that he's a friend and do the nuclear deal, I think it will seem different. I think that Israelis understand Obama is like play a double game, and then therefore they didn't trust it. The second thing is
having intelligence.
Having intelligence.
I was an
Hannah
intelligence unit,
can-
so I can't
yeah.
tell a lot, but it's already all over the news, so it's not a secret to share that it's obvious that even through the process of the deal and even after the deal was sealed, the Iranian kept breaking it and making it silent. It was being proved. So like a lot of Israelis felt like it's just a lie and like a stamp they're putting on. So yeah.
And one more thing, I think that like the majority of Israel talked about the details. The argument is about the details. I think that a lot of people saying like, of course, nuclear deal is important, but like we didn't like the details, which in every negotiation it's like the important part of it.
Yeah.
But we
never
the future
know.
will tell. This thing.
We want to conclude because we're running out of time. We want to say thank you so much. It's kind of amazing. Sure. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank them for such a very interesting morning. For this very interesting morning at Beth Israel. And we thank all the people who listened by Zoom. We've run a little bit longer than usual, but I think it was worthwhile. Israeli politics to me is always a matter of great confusion. They're natural allies for about 50 votes, and then it's all, those last dozen votes are what kind of compromises you have to make to your principles. And I think this was enlightening to see where people move, but there's probably another 10 parties that have 1 or 2 or 4 seats that can make all the difference to a new government coalition. But this was very enlightening today. I thank you so much for coming. And I think we want to have continuing discussions throughout the year, and I think that's what the rabbi would like to speak about.
Before I do that, I want to thank Barry and Adrian for once again overwhelming us with an amazing breakfast, brunch. It was just to die for, as it always is. Thank you. It's much appreciated. We are so lucky and so blessed to have these shluchim. Really, mamash, kol hakavod lachem. It was an amazing presentation. And I want to tell you that during the coming year, we are planning to have a series of discussions about Israel monthly. So really a regular event. There is so much to talk about. Things that are simply complicated that we need to have laid out for us like they did so beautifully today. And also topics that are very emotional and deeply charged. And we're going to have those conversations. That will be the subject of my sermon on Rosh Hashanah. And in fact, Hannah and Oz are helping me in the process of that work. It is not easy to talk about the difficult things. This is difficult in its own way because it's so complicated. But we know that there are topics that are difficult because they're so very triggering to the traumas that led to the state of Israel and that led to the current situations that are troubling from all perspectives nearly. So I hope that you will continue to join us for those conversations. They will not be in the form of Kolot Kehillah, but rather they will take different forms at different times of day so that people who are better in the evening, in the morning, whatever it might be, will have plenty of options to drop in. There will be many different topics. And really, it's because we have these shlichim who are able to have conversations like this with intelligence and warmth and setting a standard of respect and mutual respect and curiosity that we're able to avail ourselves of an opportunity like this. So thank you again, and more to come. Thanks to everybody for coming.